Emma Brooks stood in the small guest bedroom, fingers trailing along the edge of the open suitcase on the bed. The zipper had caught on the fabric again, like it didn't want her to leave either. She tugged it loose and exhaled, the sound soft in the quiet house. The only sound. The Denver sky beyond the window was already turning that muted shade of winter blue, the kind that made headlights look lonelier. Her hands moved without urgency, folding sweaters, tucking in the worn photo frame from her desk, slipping her passport into the side pocket even though she had no destination in mind. She'd stopped checking the time. Noah wouldn't be home for hours, if he came back at all tonight. And even if he did, he'd come in smelling of cologne she didn't own, with tired apologies that were thinner than the wine glasses they no longer used. She had already washed the scent of another woman out of the bedsheets twice. The third time she didn't bother. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. "Kendra, you okay? Need me to come by?" Emma stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then, almost without thinking, she tapped call. Kendra picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Em. I don't feel anything anymore," Emma said softly. She sat down on the edge of the bed. "I don't even know where to go." The words surprised even her. They had been sitting inside her for so long, tight and still like a knot in her chest, and now they floated out, flat and weightless. In the hallway just outside the room, footsteps paused. Gavin Mason froze, back straightening as if something had struck him between the shoulder blades. He hadn't meant to linger. He'd just stopped by Emma's floor to retrieve a folder he'd left behind in a late meeting. But he'd heard her voice, soft, unraveling, and something in it pulled him still. He hadn't known things were that bad. Back in New York, people wore misery like a badge. Loud, performative, productive. But Emma's voice hadn't been loud. It had been honest in the way only someone who was past caring could be. That frightened him more than anything. He turned quietly and stepped away before she saw him, his footsteps slow and careful. Some things weren't meant to be interrupted. Back inside the room, Emma hung up the phone without saying goodbye. She sat for a moment longer, then reached for the box beside the suitcase. Inside were the things she didn't know why she still kept. A candle he bought on their 3rd anniversary, though he forgot to light it. A sweater that still smelled like cedar and dust. A note he once left her on the fridge in the first year. "Sorry I was late. I missed you." She kept it because she remembered how it felt to believe him. She closed the box slowly. In the kitchen, the dishwasher had finished its cycle. The hum stopped, leaving the house silent again. She walked downstairs barefoot, each step muffled against the wood. The living room lights were dimmed, like the house had grown tired of pretending to. Emma poured herself a glass of water. Her hand trembled slightly. She used to wonder if she was imagining the distance, if maybe she was the one fading. But then she saw the text messages. She recognized the name. A woman from his firm, a consultant who wore red lipstick and sent too many smiley faces. Emma didn't cry. That part of her had gone quiet months ago. Instead, she opened the front door, stepping onto the porch where the air smelled faintly of pine and distant cold. She wrapped her sweater tighter around her shoulders and sat on the front step. The sky was turning dark now, stars trying to pierce through the haze of city light. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor's wind chime moved gently. She thought of leaving, really leaving, not just packing boxes and walking into a hotel lobby with a forced smile, but disappearing, starting over somewhere no one knew her name, somewhere she didn't have to explain what went wrong. But even now, even on this porch, the idea of freedom felt unreal, like someone else's story. Behind her, the porch light flickered and went out. She didn't move, and inside the firm, backlit by floor-to-ceiling windows and the glow of his monitor, Gavin Mason sat in his office, the folder he'd come back for forgotten on the desk. His gaze was unfocused, the city lights mirrored in the glass. He kept thinking about her voice, those 5 quiet words. "I don't feel anything anymore." Gavin hadn't planned to stay late. He'd promised himself that when he came back from New York, he'd set boundaries. Leave on time, sleep more, maybe even start cooking again. But Emma's voice still echoed in his mind, and now his office felt too quiet to leave. He swirled the tea in his mug, long since gone cold. Through the glass wall, he saw the soft flicker of her desk lamp down the hall. She was always the last to leave. The kind of employee no one noticed until everything started falling apart without her. But he had noticed her. More than she realized. He noticed how she brought homemade muffins on Mondays, left handwritten birthday cards on desks even when no one remembered hers. How she stayed late to help interns print client packets. How her shoes were always practical, her emails warm but efficient. He read every entry she posted on the company's internal blog, short reflections on company culture, kindness, little ideas to make people feel seen. No one else ever commented. But he read them all. Once she had written, "People remember the tone of your voice more than the words you say. Kindness lingers longer than efficiency." He remembered that line. He'd even quoted it once, at a client dinner in Manhattan. Everyone had nodded, impressed. No one asked where it came from. That was Emma. She didn't ask for attention. She gave it. And tonight, sitting at his desk, Gavin realized something quietly devastating. He had never asked her how she was. Not once. Not really. He glanced at his phone. No messages. No emergencies. Just silence, waiting. So he stood, shrugged on his coat, and made his way down the corridor, passing dimmed offices and silent screens. Her light was still on. But when he turned the corner, her desk was empty. Only a steaming mug sat there, half full. Still warm. She had stepped away. He looked once, then kept walking. He wouldn't say anything tonight. But tomorrow maybe he would start by asking, "Are you okay?" And this time he would wait for the real answer. The email subject line read simply, "Thoughts." No header. No signature. No attachments. Emma hadn't meant to send it. She hadn't even meant to save it. It was supposed to be her way of staying sane. Her quiet rebellion after the humiliating morning meeting in conference room 7B. But now, it sat in her drafts folder, a heartbeat away from being seen. That morning, she'd presented a client update deck, carefully built over 3 days, only for Kate Lindstrom to interrupt before slide 3. "This tone is off-brand," Kate had said. "You're being emotional. We're not a greeting card company." Emma had nodded, swallowing the lump rising in her throat. She could feel the eyes of the room on her. Colleagues who wouldn't speak up, who had learned to survive by watching rather than intervening. Afterward, she'd returned to her desk and opened a blank email, typing not with logic, but with feeling. Not with bullet points, but with memory. She wrote, "If we truly care about our clients, why does our language sound like it was assembled by a committee trying not to offend anyone? What if we just said what we meant? What if we talked to them the way we talk to people we love when they're afraid?" I remember the first client call I sat in on here. A woman had lost her husband and didn't understand a single term in our investment strategy. She wasn't stupid. She was grieving. She didn't need a portfolio update. She needed a sentence that said, "You're not alone." What if our brand voice was less polished and more human? What if our clients didn't just stay because of the numbers, but because they felt seen? Emma paused, reread the words, then closed the draft without deleting it. Just having it there made her feel less erased. But that night, long after most people had gone home, Zach from IT passed by her desk. He was one of the few friends she had left at the firm, always cracking dry jokes, always noticing when her lunch was untouched or her coat was still on the back of her chair at 8 p.m. He didn't mean to snoop. He just noticed her screen still glowing when she stepped away to grab tea. The email draft was open, unsent. He read it once, then again. He didn't touch anything, but he remembered every word. Later, in the IT break room, still thinking about the letter, he made a call. His older brother, Brian, worked at one of their firm's major client banks, a key account that had been teetering on the edge of cutting ties for months. Brian had confided in Zach recently, "The firm just doesn't connect anymore. It's all jargon and numbers. Clients don't feel cared for." Zach forwarded the draft anonymously. No context, just the message. The next morning, the bank called requesting a meeting. Everyone assumed it was a final notice, that they'd lost them. But something else happened. In the boardroom, during what was supposed to be an exit meeting, The bank's senior manager pulled out a printed version of the anonymous email. "Who wrote this?" he asked. "Because this is what we want." No one spoke. Kate blanched. The managing team shifted uncomfortably. Gavin, who had just stepped into the room, took the paper in hand and read it silently, line by line. His eyes lingered on one sentence. What if our brand voice was less polished and more human? He knew that voice. That night, back at the office, Gavin called an all-staff meeting. It was impromptu. People grumbled, confused. Kate sat in the front, arms crossed. Emma was near the door, quiet as always, eyes wary. When everyone settled, Gavin stood at the head of the long table and unfolded the letter. "I want to read something," he said. And then he did. The room was still. He didn't say who wrote it. He didn't need to. When he finished, he looked up and said simply, "From now on, you're our director of client communications." The words fell into the silence like a dropped stone. Mouths opened. Whispers began. Emma stared at him, stunned. Kate stood. "You can't be serious. This isn't how we promote people." But Gavin didn't waver. "I'm serious," he said. "This is the kind of voice we need now. Not just on paper, but in this room. Every day." Kate left the room with a forced laugh and a muttered, "We'll see about that." Emma remained standing, unsure what to do with her hands, her breath, her disbelief. After the meeting, people approached her. People who'd never spoken more than a polite good morning, offering soft congratulations, awkward nods, even thanks. But what stayed with her most was the quiet voice behind her as she gathered her things. "You were never invisible," Gavin said. She turned to him. His face was steady, unreadable. "That letter," he began. "I never meant to send it," she interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled just a little. "Good thing someone did." By the next morning, the firm was buzzing. Emma's name, once barely registered in emails and footnotes, now pulsed through whispered conversations near elevators, behind closed doors, between departments that never used to notice her. The words promotion, letter, and favoritism floated like static in the air. Some were curious, others resentful, but most simply stunned. Kate Lindstrom was not stunned. She was furious. At 9:14 a.m., she stormed into Gavin's office, her heels hitting the carpet like accusations. "You overstepped," she said without preamble. "We have a process, a vetting structure." Gavin didn't look up from his desk. "And how well has that structure served our clients lately?" he asked calmly. Kate folded her arms. "We don't promote people based on anonymous sentiment. That letter could have been anyone's." "But it wasn't," Gavin said, finally meeting her gaze. "And the bank asked to meet us because of it. They said it reminded them why they partnered with us in the first place." Kate's jaw tightened. "So now what? We just hand her a title and call it strategy?" Gavin stood, his voice steady but firm. "Emma's been doing the emotional labor of this company for years. She's done it quietly, without recognition, and without asking for a title. That ends now." Kate opened her mouth, but Gavin's tone shifted. "And if you have concerns about the decision, we'll discuss them. But not by undermining a colleague's work in front of the staff." Kate stared at him for a long beat. Then, with a tight nod, she turned and left. Meanwhile, Emma sat in the break room, her coffee untouched. The events of the previous day clung to her like damp clothes. She wasn't used to being seen. She wasn't sure she trusted it. Zach slid into the chair beside her, nursing his usual iced latte despite the January chill. "You okay?" he asked. Emma hesitated, then nodded. "I think so." He glanced around, then leaned in. "I read the letter, the draft. It was open on your screen. I didn't mean to read it, but I did, and I sent it to Brian." She looked at him, startled. "I didn't sign it or say it was you," he added quickly. "But I could not send it, Em. It was honest. It was exactly what this place needed." Emma exhaled, the breath shaky. She didn't know what to say. A part of her wanted to be angry, but a bigger part, the exhausted, unseen part, felt something else. Relief. "Thank you," she said finally, "for believing it mattered." Zach smiled. It more than mattered. Across the office, things were shifting. By midday, Emma received her new title in writing, Director of Client Communications, along with a note from Gavin asking her to present a short talk at Friday's strategy meeting. Not a deck, not a bullet list, just 10 minutes about her vision. She stared at the email for a long time. Vision was not a word people used around her. She'd always been the implementer, the fixer, the one who smoothed rough edges left by others. Now she was being asked to lead. She printed the email and folded it into her notebook. Just seeing it on paper made it feel more real. That afternoon, Gavin caught her in the hallway, hands in his pockets, sleeves rolled. "Just checking in," he said. Emma paused. She hadn't spoken to him alone since the meeting. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "You already did," he replied. She gave a half-laugh, uncertain. Gavin smiled, but his eyes were tired. "Emma, this company's grown cold. We've spent so long trying to be precise that we forgot how to be human. You reminded everyone." She looked down at the floor. "I was just venting." He tilted his head. "Maybe. But sometimes the truth sounds like venting when no one's ready to hear it." There was a silence, long but not uncomfortable. Then he added, "If you need support, I'm here." She nodded. "Thank you." But later, as she walked back to her desk, a new anxiety crept in, the weight of visibility. Recognition could feel like a spotlight, but it also made you a target. Kate's stare at the meeting, the passive-aggressive emails, the way people now smiled a little too tightly. Emma knew this glow of approval could turn fast. But for now, she focused on the work. She opened a blank document, titled it Friday Strategy Talk. Then, in plain text, she typed the first line. "What if we remembered our clients are human before we try to convince them we're competent?" And for the first time in years, she felt something stir beneath the fear. Not certainty, not confidence, but the beginning of belonging. By Thursday afternoon, the office didn't feel quite the same. It wasn't dramatic. No declarations or sweeping changes. Just something in the air, like the silence between people had thinned. Emma noticed it in the way colleagues lingered by her desk. First, it was Jonah from accounting asking if she had time to review a client-facing letter. Then Maya from marketing dropped by, asking about tone and whether Emma might look over a pitch deck with a softer eye. Even the front desk receptionist, Lauren, stopped her near the elevator and whispered, "I read what you wrote. I printed it. Gave it to my sister." Emma blinked. "You? How did you get it?" Lauren smiled. "Things travel, especially things that sound like the truth." In the days since her impromptu promotion, Gavin had kept his distance, at least publicly. No favoritism, no extra meetings. But she felt his presence, quiet and observant, watching how the office bent towards something more human. Her new role didn't come with a roadmap. No one handed her a packet labeled, "How to Change Company Culture." But Emma didn't need instructions. She started small. She created a client moments board in the break room, a space where staff could pin small stories of client gratitude, handwritten notes, or moments where things went right. First, it stood empty. Then someone posted a thank you card from a retired couple who'd been helped through a loss. Then a child's drawing, sent after her parents' mortgage was refinanced without stress. By Friday, the board was nearly full. She revised standard email templates, replacing phrases like, "Per your request," with "We're here to help." She removed passive voice, added warmth, left space for breath. Some scoffed, Kate included, but clients noticed. One wrote, "I don't know what changed over there, but I feel like I'm finally talking to people again." The change was quiet, but it rippled. In meetings, Emma spoke with more clarity than volume. She didn't try to dominate the room. She asked instead what clients had said in response. She remembered their names, their lives, moments from their stories that had nothing to do with money. The numbers hadn't shifted yet, but the tone had. And in a place like this, tone could be the beginning of everything. It was late when she stepped out onto the rooftop. The air was crisp, Denver's skyline softened by the haze of evening light. Emma leaned against the railing, mug of cold tea in hand, her blazer long since draped over her chair downstairs. Below, the city moved in quiet lines, headlights trailing like ribbons, lives unfolding in small, invisible rooms. She'd stayed late finishing client notes, not because she had to, but because she wanted to leave things better than she found them. That instinct hadn't changed. Behind her, the rooftop door clicked open. She didn't need to turn. Gavin. He stepped beside her, not too close, not saying anything at first, just letting the silence settle. The wind lifted strands of her hair. She tucked them behind her ear and glanced at him sideways. "Didn't think you were still here," she said quietly. He smiled. "I could say the same." They stood like that for a moment, two silhouettes against a city that barely knew their names. Up here, the firm's glass walls felt far away. Finally, Gavin broke the silence. "When I left New York last fall, I told people I needed a change of pace, a break from the pressure." Emma looked over, curious. "But that wasn't really it," he continued. "I was burned out, not just tired. I mean hollow. I'd built something I didn't believe in anymore. We were profitable, influential. But there were days I'd sit in boardrooms and forget why any of it mattered." Emma didn't speak. She knew the shape of that emptiness. She had lived inside it. "I read your blog," he added. She blinked. "What?" "All of it. Every entry. Even the one about the dying ficus in the third-floor lobby." Emma laughed, short, surprised. "That plant's been through more than most of us." He smiled, but then his voice turned quiet. "You wrote something once, about how the smallest kindnesses feel like lifelines when no one expects them. That line stayed with me." She looked away, cheeks warming. "I didn't think anyone read those posts." "I did," he said simply. "Because in a place built on performance, yours was the only voice that sounded like a person." The wind picked up slightly. She tightened her grip on the mug. "I spent years doing everything right," she said after a moment. "Not because I thought I'd be rewarded, but because it felt like the only way to hold myself together. If I could be useful, maybe that was enough." Gavin didn't respond at first. Then he asked, "Was it?" She shook her head. "No, it kept me invisible." He nodded, understanding something in her answer. "Until now," she added. "Now people want my opinion, my time. They smile too hard. They act like I changed overnight." "And how does that feel?" Emma hesitated. "Exposing," she said. "Like I've gone from no weight to too much." Gavin looked at her then, really looked, past the surface calm, past the new title. "You're not just carrying a job," he said. "You're carrying the shift." She laughed bitterly. "Well, that's a lovely burden." "But you're not alone," he added. That stopped her. She met his gaze. For once, he wasn't composed. His expression was open, even vulnerable. "I spent years building things people admired," he said. "But the only time I felt seen was when someone dared to tell me the truth." Emma tilted her head. "And now," he smiled faintly, "now I'm trying to become the kind of person who deserves that truth." They stood in silence again, the kind that feels earned. Below, the city kept moving. "Do you miss New York?" she asked. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I think I miss who I thought I could be there more than the place itself." She understood that. He looked at her more carefully now. "You know, I wasn't surprised it was you," he said. "Who wrote the letter?" He nodded. Emma glanced down at her mug, the tea cold and forgotten. "I didn't want to be found," she said. "Not like that." "But you were," he said gently. "And now you're here." She didn't reply. Then, after a beat, he added, "You don't have to carry it all. Not alone." She looked at him again, and something softened between them. Not romance, not yet, but something quiet and human, like recognition. Friday morning arrived with the sharp edge of late winter, the sun cold but determined. Emma stood in the glass-walled conference room, facing a dozen senior partners and team leads. Her notes sat in a closed folder. She hadn't looked at them once. Instead, She spoke from the part of herself that used to whisper truths no one heard. She talked about tone, about empathy, about how the way we say things shapes what people believe, not just about a company but about themselves. She told them stories. A client's shaky voice after losing her partner, the email she almost didn't answer, the thank you card she kept tucked in a drawer. The room was quiet when she finished. Not because they didn't understand, because they did. As the meeting broke and people filed out, several paused to nod or thank her, genuinely. Gavin said nothing, just gave her a long look that said everything. Then he left, coat in hand, taking a call as he walked. Emma stayed behind, her hands finally steady. That afternoon, a new client came in, nervous, wide-eyed, unsure. Emma greeted her personally, sat through the meeting, translated the finance jargon into something real. By the end, the client smiled, said she felt like someone finally listened. Afterward, Gavin approached her near the elevator, his voice lower than usual. "How about we talk tonight?" he said, just as two people who've finally allowed themselves to be real. Emma looked up. There was no charm in his smile, no performance, just warmth. She held his gaze. "I'd like that," she said. He stepped back, letting her pass first. She walked down the hallway toward the exit, coat in hand, the hum of the office soft behind her. Emma Brooks had spent years inside a life that looked right on the outside. Now she was walking into something uncertain. But this time she wasn't walking away from herself. She was walking toward something unexpected, something that felt finally like home.